And also, my last panel, we couldn't stop talking, so we ran.
Sign of a good panel.
Yes. So, my name is Paul Kahn. I've been coming here for over 20 years now, and been on panels and moderating for much of that time. Other panelists, please introduce yourselves. Go ahead.
I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Logistics, myopic proofreader for Critical Blast Publishing, and I will help people doing their crowdfundings by looking at the data that comes in with my 35 years of IT experience through Critical Blast Consulting. Yeah, and I wrote some books. Welcome to ARC.
Angela Williams, a lot of you guys know me. I have actually been coming to Archon since I graduated high school in 1979. And I think, other than COVID, I only missed 1 year. So, yeah, I've been walking around and hiding in the corners and staying out of trouble and volunteering everywhere and knowing this guy off and on, so, yeah.
All right, well, so the panel description is short. Our culture is diverse and our pop culture is PC. So this leaves us a lot of room to go for the good discussion, I think. I should perhaps mention that in my day job, working at the library in WashU, I'm on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So that is an interest of mine, and hopefully it will help inform our discussion. Do you all have any particular background in diversity issues?
Well, yeah, I guess you could say I have a daily background in it. I'm a high school teacher for a 99.9% all Black and African American school district here in St. Louis, and 100% free and reduced lunch. We have a very large, compared to what people would think, you would imagine it being very large. We have a very large gay and transgender and transitioning population of our students. In fact, last year I had a student that she was emancipated at 16, and she's been on her own path to go through a full, go from being a he to she, and it's, and she was always extremely defensive, and I'm like, why? She goes, well, because people aren't going to like me. And I said, but do you like yourself? And ever since then, I stopped having any problems with her in class, So, and it wasn't something that so many people get caught up in their little blinders, and they don't, and this is, I have teachers calling me all the time about, how do I deal with this kid? I'm like, okay, first off, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a professional, I'm just a teacher. Well, they said that you listen to them. I'm like, well, that's the first thing you need to do, is listen to anybody. I don't know, it's just what was brought up. Exactly. And that's the way I was brought up, is to listen to people. So, yeah.
I do not have a professional degree or position that deals with diversity, other than, my day jobs are constantly reminding us that it exists out there. My other profession deals with it only on the level that it encroaches into pop culture, and we discuss whether it's being done right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I looked at this panel discussion schedule. I'm like, why did they try to get me kicked out of Archon first instead of the last panel of the series? But we'll see how it goes.
I don't know. What do you think pop culture is, though? I mean, when we're talking about, because I'm on the program committee, and we talked a little bit about this, and it's like diversity in pop culture. So I know I have an idea of what pop culture is, but it's different than younger population of pop culture. So,
well, I mean, it's always one of those things that is a little bit fuzzy, but I mean, it's kind of the difference between say, going to the symphony versus going to a rock concert. There's certain parts of culture that are associated more with, a youth culture and being just popular enough that you can make a lot of money off of it, versus, say, needing grants and backing institutions and things like that. But I mean, yeah, to some degree, I agree with your point that it's hard to draw a line, and it's kind of like porn. You just know it when you see it. RJ, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, pop culture is, by and large, I think when we think of it, it's what the media uses and says is the current culture. It's what their reflection is. Now, whether that reflection is accurate or whether it's warped, depends on who's running the media at the time.
The music industry is what I think of as pop culture, because it's either popular or you're not in it.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the same applies to TV and movies. I would say pop culture is more the trends that you've got the mainstay culture that's always constant, but pop culture is the flash in the pan kind of stuff that and pop culture can turn into more the durable, lasting culture, but it's more moment based than the baseline culture.
Some of it sticks around. Star Trek is very much pop culture, but pop culture on a day-to-day basis is what's the flavor of today's bread recipe and who's in the circus act.
Exactly.
I got to push back a little bit on what you said, Catherine, because I mean, my first example was about music, and I've been involved with music professionally for some time. So to say that in music you're either popular or you're not in it, I don't think is accurate. There's like the symphony. There's plenty of small jazz clubs that don't have a lot of people who go to them, but so. But
they're popular, but popular with who?
Yeah,
That's I think pop culture is pretty much your blue collar person. If you're in a more cultured class, you're almost in more of a niche if you're going to the symphony or to jazz than you are if you're just a guy who works a 9 to 5, gets up, watches TV when he gets home. What's he going to watch? That kind of stuff.
Well, and then I can tell you, I can counter that with if I were to poll my students and the community I teach in, what's pop culture to you? And it's, what's the current pop culture? Well, it's going to be music. Some of my students are going to say the current anime, like 7 Deadly Sins, the current episodes of those. Some of them are going to say the big communication on campus is, oh my God, Ms. Williams, because they know that I have it right up there on Meet the Teacher. Okay, I'm not right, but it's in a good way. No, I don't. That's my tagline. But I list. I like anime. I like books. I go to science fiction conventions. I do this. I like science. I like, I read. I don't take anything. If you tell me something, I'm going to research it, make sure it's right. I'm not going to take it for granted. So my students, and especially the ones that I've had for 4 years, are very much able to tell me the truth of what they think pop culture is. And in fact, I polled them verbally. And for them, it's certain animes, and it's the Jeffrey Dahmer documentary / production on Netflix right now. Oh my God, they're all talking about that. I'm like, okay, I've watched a lot of that. But to them, that's pop culture. It's whatever's current right now. And it's. I know if I were to ask my parents what's pop culture, then my mom and dad would say, because they were born in the 50s. Well, not the 50s, sorry. Dad was 1935, mom was 1941, and they would have two different ideas of what pop culture was or is. So
you didn't mention, and I'm surprised, but you didn't mention sports. Don't your students consider sports popular culture?
Yeah, they do. And on our campus, it's football and basketball. Yeah.
So
Football
because
and basketball.
we should probably try to steer the conversation to diversity,
Mm-hmm.
because we're just so far been just about pop culture.
We're establishing a baseline.
Yes. Well, see, I think we can segue there though, because the idea of pop culture being, well, what's really popular at the moment, then popularity implies a certain amount of what you might call lower common denominators.
Sure.
And the result of that for decades has been that the stories that are being told in pop culture are always about the lowest common denominator people, which have pretty much been, white, male, straight, and probably Protestant.
Yeah.
And so, but, I happen to think, and I think a lot of people would agree, that if you think about it, the stories told in our pop culture should reflect the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And if the culture is diverse, then you need to have stories told that reflect that diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now, getting to your point you were just making,
yes.
panel, one of the descriptors says getting along in this panel goes to what you're talking about. Now, I have a question for both panel. I don't understand this pushback toxicity in certain fans that comes across Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, MCU. There's a toxicity and a pushback of diversity and inclusion that appears to be coming from persons who identify themselves as straight white males. Anytime there's any discussion about in any of these fans about not a straight white male, there's this toxicity, there's this vitriol pushback. And to me, I don't understand where this is coming from, because it seems to me that for decades it has been a positive exclusion to people that look like me and other ethnic minorities in this country. And I don't understand, because it's during those decades, persons of color were subjugated to subservient roles and stereotypical roles for decades in pop culture. Now, to reflect society, more ethnic minorities are getting diverse, and it's a great thing, but there seems to be this pushback from this particular segment of our society that is offended by presence. But when I think about a virtual table, everybody's at the table. Everybody gets a seat at the table. Nobody sits at the kids' table in the back because you're not worthy to sit at the big table with us. So now I'm trying to say, there's a policy of inclusion which includes straight white people. You have to take with all of us. You can sit there too. We can swap off the chairs, but no one's better than anybody else at this table. But it seems to me there's this pushback across all families that seems, I don't know, where is this coming from? That's my question for you now.
Yeah.
Well, I have thoughts, but you guys go ahead.
Y'all can leave. I'll take the rest of the hour now.
Oh, okay. Well, let me get mine in then. Don't.
Yeah. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I simply makes people uncomfortable. Makes people uncomfortable. I have worked with a teacher in the past that is so, and why she worked for St. Louis City when I was there, I don't know. She would leave every day just shaking with anxiety. And I finally got her, I'm like, what? She goes, well, I don't know how to talk to my students. I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're people. What do you mean you don't know how to talk to your students? I just don't know how to talk. Why? So give me a little bit more. And after some days, she goes, well, I'm just uncomfortable. Why? Because I'm white and they're black. What if I say something wrong? I said, what if you say something right? And then the same thing goes along with, because I've seen it, some of you may know my kid's father, my ex-husband, John Gonzalez, Gonzo, and in the summer, he's as dark as you are. When he first moved to St. Louis, people thought he was black. he's Native American, Spanish, Mexican Indian, okay? Gets beautifully tan in the winter, in the summer, and we would be refused to be seated together. When we would refuse, they would refuse to let us in the door at some places. There was a restaurant locally in Overland that they would let us sit, but would refuse to let anybody wait on us because we were a mixed race couple, regardless of if he was black or Hispanic, regardless of it. And to me, at the bare course, simplest thing, that person refusing to treat anybody else with dignity, it's not so much a matter of arrogance, it's a matter of being uncomfortable dealing with somebody that doesn't look and act like them.
Hostile to someone who doesn't look and act like that.
Mm-hmm. And they get hostile because they're uncomfortable.
It's hostility first.
Yeah.
You're uncomfortable having to deal with it.
I don't know. See, I've known teachers that are just so uncomfortable that it comes out as hostility. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess I give humanity the benefit of the doubt. You know?
I've seen it too.
Yeah, I have too. But I don't know. I lean towards being uncomfortable, not knowing how to deal with somebody that's not like them. You know? Yeah.
I'm going to come at you with a couple of sayings which, to me, have become cliches, but clearly are not, at least in some contexts, because they always seem to strike some people as being a new thought. But the first is, to the privileged, equality feels like threat.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody is used to being, like I was talking when we were talking about lowest common denominators there, when somebody's used to being the default, when he can just assume that automatically everything is about him because he's white, because he's straight, because he's male. If you're not the default anymore, if people can't just automatically assume that you're the only one who's worth talking about, that's going to feel like a loss to some people. They're used to feeling like they're the center, and they feel threatened by the equality.
I'm a middle-aged white straight male, and the only time in history when that's a bad thing to be.
Well, see, that's the thing.
That's my tagline sometimes.
It's not a bad thing to be. It's just not the only thing to be.
Right.
Yes.
And for so long, our culture has said that the only people of privilege are those that are straight and white and first male. And then maybe females behind them. And it's just wrong to teach our children that this is the way it needs to be, because this sounds very hippie, and I did not learn this from my parents. I actually learned it from their parents. Okay. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We all wake up in the mornings, God willing, Creator willing, and we all have a job to do. But never in any of those descriptions is the job to do involve hatred and exclusion. So
I said I was going to come at you with some cliches. I've done one so far. I'll throw out the next two together, I think, because I think they're related. One is a meme. You know that meme where there's who is it? I can't remember the actor now, but he's saying, he's got this look on his face. Like, please explain to me this. And this particular instance of it was, oh, you're afraid white males are going to become a minority? Why? Are minorities treated as second-class citizens in this country?
and that's why.
Yes.
That's
And
why
the
they're
other one-
afraid, because they treat those that are not you, RJ, not you. You're here. You're here, RJ, not you.
Oh man.
And because that's That's that control factor, and that doesn't show security in oneself. That shows insecurity, is trying to control anybody, everybody, anything, everything that's in their life. That shows their insecurity in themselves.
And this brings me to the
third, you're man or woman.
Yes, sorry. This brings me to the third thing that I was going to say, which is taking us to another different minority. Homophobia is a man being afraid that another man is going to treat him the way he treats women.
Yeah.
So somewhere in there, they're aware that they treat other people badly. And they've had an excuse all these years because of tradition and societal roles to treat other people badly. That seed of guilt is there, but they don't want that thought surfaced. And so when people express ideas about equality and inclusion, I think that's where you get a lot of that reflexive pushback. Yes?
You also have a certain amount of that coming from people who themselves know that they are not all that spectacularly special, and if they feel like they're outclassed by a lot of the rest of the world, and if it's bad enough being outclassed by the rest of the straight white males, but if now they're going to be outclassed by everybody else,
even more,
they're going to be even farther down the totem pole than they already are.
Right.
But there is a totem pole, isn't there?
Unfortunately, I wish there wasn't. I have conversations with my students that they're like, that they're, they act just like a racist white person would. And I'm like, why do you act like that? Well, because that's the way people treat me. Okay. Is the way they treat you wrong? Well, yes. Then why are you emulating that?
you have to break the cycle.
You got to break the cycle, and I tell them that. You got to break the cycle. I'm always a mom. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
There's an internet personality, his name is Jim Wright. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him. But, and he's certainly not the only person who's done this, but he'll like show these people at like white supremacist rallies. And he just show pictures of them from the news coverage or something. And with a comment to the effect of, you think you're the epitome of humanity? Really? Have you looked at yourself?
But that's the problem. When somebody looks at themselves in the mirror, they don't. If they have that anger buildup, if they have that I'm more superior than everybody else, they're only going to see that. They're not going to see what they've done or what they do to others as being wrong. They see it as their right to be able to treat other people negatively so that it benefits them. And that
this country was based on that whole manifest destiny idea that we have the right to move in and take over the entire country from sea to shining sea.
Yeah. Even though white Americans' ancestors probably came here with good intentions to get away from that same oppression, they turned right around and oppressed the people that were already living here with that.
I love Garrison Keillor's line about that. My ancestors came here in search of greater oppression than was allowed under English law.
That's true too. That's true. And unfortunately that's happened. It just not just Europeans have done that, but everybody's done that. I mean, look at the what the Japanese try to do to the Chinese, and what China's trying to do to Taiwan right now, and and what Russia is doing to Ukraine. I mean, it's, if we could find a cure for that gene that causes that, I would invest my last dollar.
Well, we have a movie in theaters right now that's actually celebrating a mass slave trader as a hero.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen The Woman King, just because it's a black actress leading that thing doesn't mean that the movie's not celebrating a slave trader, because that's what happened historically.
Yeah.
But we spent a lot of time on real world diversity here when the topic was more pop culture and you were talking about pushback against characters. And I think a lot of the people on the internet believe history began sometime around 1999, 2000. We went from a culture of people who believe the earth is only 6,000 years old to a people who believe it's 22. So I see things come out like, hey, Star Trek's going to have its first person of color captain. I'm like, you never watched Deep Space Nine. They're going to have their first female captain. You never watched Voyager. So there's a lot of this, take that, incels. She-Hulk's an attorney. I'm like, we don't care. Well, of course she's a green attorney. She's an attorney in the books. There's a lot of, I said at the beginning that pop culture is a reflection of the culture. And I think that there's also a good portion of it where it's like the mirror trying to comb your hair for you. There's a section of pop culture where it's trying to drive the culture rather than reflect the culture. And we see that. We strive for a representation in pop culture now, but I think there's a lot of overcorrecting too. Is it important to the story that the characters be of this particular mix? Probably, maybe, don't know. Is it important to the story that we replace an existing character with somebody who goes against the type? This is more along the lines of when, comic books get adapted to movies and stuff like that. Then it's more of a thing like, why? Why are you doing this? Well, we're doing this to be more diverse. Why aren't you telling the story and let the story drive the diversity? Just like, oh, look, we're going to, we're going to introduce possibly, and this is fan casting going on now, we're introducing a black actress to play Rogue in the next X-Men movie. That'll be very diverse. I'm like, have you read X-Men? X-Men's been about diversity since 1969. Yeah.
Well, that you make the point, and I'm also thinking as well, is the gender of the ethnic background of the character essential to what the character is? And the ethnic thing doesn't matter what race or gender person is. Right. It's essential to who and what the character is. Black Panther kind of needs to be African American.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know. Chris Pratt would make a great Black Panther.
If it's essential to who and what this character is, but if it's not, if the pigment of the skin or the gender is irrelevant to who and what this character is, it doesn't matter what gender, what race, anything. So when I see these, if you talk about the casting of these movies and whatnot, okay, if it doesn't matter to what the character is, then why is it more about it? Because it's not essential.
How many characters don't that matter for, though?
Little Mermaid?
I don't care about Little Mermaid. But for the majority, Nick Fury, okay, they cast Sam Jackson.
You remember the uproar on that? Because I don't.
No, that's exactly, it's fine.
But you know why they cast Sam Jackson in the movie? Because they cast Sam Jackson in the comic books for another 10 years before that. There was an audience expectation now at that point.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I would say with Rogue, there is a way to do it because being from Louisiana, there is a special situation with the free black.
Oh, the Creole. Yeah.
Class
Sure.
That was in Louisiana,
But you're asking for the audience to be especially educated on a specific region of the country, whereas the mass audience is going to see a black actress playing Rogue, and if she is true to the character in all her other aspects, the first time a black actress says honey child and sugar on screen is going to get massive pushback from people who's like, oh, that's a very racial stereotype.
But it could be a teaching moment.
Yeah.
In the case of, my personal take on this has always been, if they're doing a remake of the X-Men and they cast black actresses Rogue, I don't have a problem with that. If they were casting a sequel to the original X-Men movies and replaced the woman who was playing Rogue with a black actors, that would be kind of distracting.
But you don't see the adaptation as a sequel to the comic?
Talk to the James Bond
I
fan.
don't see
Yeah.
the movie adaptation isn't a sequel to the comic.
Or pretty soon the Doctor Who
It's
franchise.
an adaptation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Doctor Who's different. I mean, he can be somebody different every single time. I've been
Well-
waiting for a female Doctor Who for a couple of years now. I was really kind of hoping it was going to be the girl who played Clara.
Yes.
Because she said 3 different times during her run, "I'm the Doctor." I'm like, oh, that's foreshadowing. Please let that be foreshadowing.
No, and now she's Constantine, so.
I know. Now, okay, Sandman. Excellent opportunity to talk about that here, because, hey, did we not see, everybody saying, hey, Death is being played by a black person? Now, Death had a very iconic look. Was it important that she was white to the character in the books? Not really. But, we went 75 issues with her looking a certain way. We had T-shirts and pendants and hats and stickers and everything. If you looked at that, you go, oh, that's Death. You didn't even need the name on it anymore. So with Sandman, you see her first episode and you're like, oh, she's a black girl now. That takes some getting used to. Okay, I'm used to it. She's delivering great lines. She's a good actress. But with Sandman, it was a great show, probably the most faithful adaptation I've seen with what they could do legally. And it kept tripping over itself to remind you that these characters don't matter because we can replace them with anybody. It's like, oh, Death is a black girl now. Okay, I'm used to it. Let's watch. Oh, Unity Kincaid's a black girl now. Okay, I'm watching. I'm used to it. Oh, this person, the couple in the diner that have horrible fantasies. They're a black couple now. Okay, and it just it kept interrupting the show to remind you, we're replacing people.
I can understand interrupting the show.
It kept taking me out of it.
And it kept taking out of it. And it's if you don't, okay, I'm going to use the theater group in St. Louis, and it's pop culture for some people. The all-black Shakespearean theater group.
Yeah.
Does that take away from Shakespeare? Because they're all black actors playing Shakespearean characters. So why should it matter anyplace else? Shakespeare is one of everybody knows who Shakespeare is, whether you know Shakespeare or not. Okay. And so does that take away from Macbeth, or does it take away from the witches, or does it take away from anything?
It adds something to Othello.
It adds something to Othello. Yes, it does. Yeah.
I was going to say, actually, Patrick Stewart had an interesting take on Othello because he avoided that role for a long time. And then they finally hit on the idea of having him play Othello and everybody else in the cast be black.
I'd have to find that. Yeah. I'd have to find that and watch that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
There was a wonderful interview by the guy that does Sandman, Neil Gaiman.
Yes.
He interviewed with Mark Maron, very long and everything. And he went over about when they were developing Sandman, is to say, why is this character, does this character need to be male or female or straight or whatever? And so they really looked at, I've not seen it, so I don't, when you were talking about it, I don't think to, but I really thought that was inspired to say, we're putting this character together, but then why do they need to be? If they are written sort of originally as male, they could be female or color or whatever. So I thought that was inspiring.
Yeah, there's a point though when you start to say that, not you, but the general you, when you start to say that nothing about this character is important, then you've just said the character is not important, and you've removed any reason why I should care about the character.
I don't know that they're saying that in any instance. They're just saying very specific things like their gender or their
Yeah.
color.
Does it make a
There's
difference?
lots of other characteristics about them that say the same.
Right.
I'd like to throw a couple of franchises out there for your opinions.
Go for it.
Shields up.
Both of these shows are relatively new and have both gotten a certain amount of pushback for their diverse casting. I'm talking about House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Both of which are high fantasy and therefore basically based on medieval England, which was largely, although not completely, as we know now, historically white. But they've gone out of their way to have some prominent black people in the cast, and they've gotten a certain amount of pushback about that. And what are your feelings about this? Feelings or thoughts?
Me personally, it doesn't bother me as long as the story's good and the actor is good. I don't care who's playing the actor.
Yeah. Me personally, doesn't bother me because the story hasn't been good.
That's a separate issue. I mean, I had a whole comment thread with a friend of mine on Facebook just recently about the Rings of Power, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, if the acting's good and the presentation's good, and every Hollywood, I don't care if it's little Hollywood, big Hollywood, Dollywood, whatever, everybody's going to take liberties with the story as it's written. But if that can be delivered, if you can take yourself as the viewer out of, oh my God, that's not the way Tolkien wrote it, to, you know what, they've made some changes, but this is still good. Yeah, it's like eating an apple pie. You know what, they use cinnamon instead of nutmeg. It's not what I'm used to, but it's still really good. So if that can happen, then, and I can watch it and still enjoy it, even though going, I know that's not the way it originally was, but that kind of works. I still like it. I don't care who's playing what character.
With Lord of the Rings, since he based a lot of the elves on Norse and Germanic mythology, there are light elves and dark elves in that mythology.
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, why would that matter?
The dark elves tend to be evil, which gets us into a whole
Well,
that gets into
Orcs, let's kill some orcs.
The dark elves being evil is actually more Gary Gygax. And
another whole thing.
And the more you look at it, starts to read like some of the Mark of Cain kind of crap that.
Even if you're talking about medieval England, it's not like medieval England did not have contact with the continent of Africa.
Oh, sure.
Right.
So it doesn't
But
make
it's
sense
still-
to me to
Well,
for that to be pushed.
and what about, I mean, I would love to see, I don't know if you've heard anything about this, because I know you're really into tracking movies and things, but there's supposed to be a future production of the first documented and the most famous Black Samurai in Japan. And there's going to be a movie about that. So are they going to address how he got there? Why is he the only one? Are there other blacks in Japan at the time? And we're talking samurai feudal Japan. So that's going back prior to whites bringing Africans to America. So
there was a show, Merlin, if you recall.
yeah, a horrible show, but yes.
Yes, well,
I like the
it
ending.
wasn't great, but it had its moments.
Because it was over.
And one of the things about that was they also had racially diverse casting.
Yeah.
Guinevere and her father were black.
Mm-hmm.
He was the village blacksmith, I think. And I was like, I don't know how historically accurate this is, but here's the thing. These may take place, well, for one thing, they're taking place in a mythical past. But another thing is, they're being made now, and they're being consumed now.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to watch like some of these reaction videos of little black girls seeing that the new Ariel is going to be black, to realize that representation is really important.
You've seen a different video than I have.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I've seen there's another video out there that was getting TikTok height, where it was a little black girl watching it, and there was the trailer, and she turned and said, "That's not Ariel." So
Okay.
what you've seen
I have not seen
before
that one.
is
Yeah, I
feeds
haven't
what you
seen that
expect
one.
next.
Well, yeah, and it's all your
Losing
perception
their
of what you
shit
see.
with the joy
Yeah.
of seeing,
Yeah.
seeing that.
Yeah.
And, one thing that certain white apologists say is that, these stories have universal themes And so everybody should be able to relate to the central character, even if he is male and white, because they're confronting things that apply to us all.
If it's done well.
And that is their polite way of saying, I'm really a racist and very uncomfortable with changing
it
anything.
never works the other way around, because if these themes really are universal, then you can have that character be female or be black or Asian or gay or whatever.
Yeah.
And the universality should apply in the same way, and the white guy should be able to relate to them. Somehow it never seems to work that way.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I suppose on the subject of like, oh, that's not historically accurate, but like we're making it now. I mean, how far can it go? How far is it until, wow, this is really not historically accurate? I guess obvious modern example is that movie Woman King. How far is it when like rewriting history for diversity and representation?
Well, now wait a minute now.
The Woman King is historically accurate.
I'm not aware of any significant ways in which that movie is not historically accurate.
Yes.
In that it's not historically accurate in that tribe that's shown, they were slave traders of other tribes.
Yeah, she was.
And that's not represented in the movie.
I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't. I've only read about it. I haven't seen it yet. I really want to go see it. But I understand that they do show.
Shown as like freeing slaves from white invaders, but in reality, the white invaders were freeing slaves from that tribe.
Okay, I'll have to go see that. Yeah.
So, like, how far can rewriting history go?
Well,
That's true.
it's already gone pretty blanking far because
It's
there's
got
not
our
a whole lot of stuff out there that's all that historically accurate.
No.
It never has.
And again, it gets back to the point of pop culture driving culture.
Exactly.
What do we want you to
Pop culture
think?
drives culture. Yeah.
American films have always been driven by who they think the audience will respond to. Their audience. So that's why you got John Wayne as Genghis Khan.
And Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There were other examples.
Not Charlie Chaplin, Charlie Chan.
Charlie Chan.
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, what's his name? I forget the actor's name now, but he had a streaming series about, was it even streaming? Anyway, he did a series of shows about history and how a lot of what we learn as history in school is complete horseshit.
Oh yeah. Forbidden
and
history.
And he has a line in there about when the myth is better than the truth, print the myth.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When the myth is better than the truth, print the myth. The show I'm thinking of is called Forbidden History.
That might be it.
There's quite a few, but there's one show called Forbidden History. If you can find it on Discovery or the History Channel, you can find it on YouTube too. There may not be everything may be accurate, because how do we know that? But at the same time, it's saying, well, he tells you on the subject, okay, this is what we know. This is the truth behind what we know, which is not what really happened. So it's a really good show. It's a really good show.
On the subject of the English being white, by the way, I read a thing recently about where they did some forensic analysis on a body that was dug out of a bog in England from like 9,000 years ago, and they found out that this guy had actually very dark skin, as dark as any African.
Yeah, and I think they were able to extract some DNA, and they found out that he was Asian and African and European.
I don't remember that analysis, but
yeah, there's one I'm thinking of.
The ancient world had a lot more travel and mixing around.
Oh yeah, than modern history
We need
things.
some sterile frog eggs and just clone the guy back.
I don't know, but we could sit here and do more.
I think it's incumbent upon, especially on this subject, I don't care what race, gender, sexual orientation, we all do our own research. Don't take things you hear. We all, it's incumbent upon us as human beings, do our own research. Research documents contemporaneous with the time that you're talking about. The source material. The Woman King, just go back and look at the documents from that era.
Yeah.
The recordings and writings when they talk about these people. Because we as human beings are not one thing.
Right.
No human being ever born is one thing. we all have this good and bad, this yin and yang. The founding fathers, slaveholders, what they founded this country. But the thing is, everybody is not one thing.
No.
So it's incumbent on all of us not just absorb like sponges. No, we have to do the work.
Yeah.
We have to continue our
Yes.
Words work.
We're made of star stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to me a lot of stuff, if we just do our own research and just split these sponges,
Yeah.
and you just say, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
This is what happened. These are Dr. contemporaries for the time, and describe these people in detail. Okay, we're gonna go through our own research, and then we can see, okay, this person did this thing. They were good and bad. Okay, this is how human beings are. We're not monolithic.
Right.
We're not just this one freaking thing.
Right.
We're multifaceted. So it seems to me we need to do our own research as well.
I'd like to springboard off of that. I mentioned earlier about having a discussion with a friend of mine who's another Tolkien's fan and scholar about rings of power and the things that they're getting wrong. And they mentioned author friends who said that they didn't worry too much about adaptations because adaptations, even if they're bad, will drive a certain number of people to the original source material, and then they sell more books. So, in the same way, hopefully, things about historical events, even if they get them wrong, a certain amount of people will be curious enough to research what really happened, and then they'll find out maybe something that really is right. There's a wonderful movie called Saving Mr. Banks.
Yes.
That the Disney company put out about how what's her name?
P.L. Travers.
Yeah, Mary Travers didn't want to give Walt the rights to adapt Mary Poppins, and he brought her to the States and basically turned on the whole charm offensive for her. And in the movie, he converts her and he gets the rights and they make the movie and it's a good movie and everybody's happy. That is not what happened in real life. He never approved of the movie. And a friend of mine was quite incensed when she found out the degree of myth making that Disney wasn't.
It was a Disney film. You didn't think they were going to make Walt look like a greedy corporatist.
Do we have time for the last two?
Yeah, let's make it quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Young lady back here, she's had her hand up for a while.
Back to talking about historical accuracy, I've been doing a deep dive on Middle Ages is my wheelhouse, and the 19th century historians who were transliterating medieval documents, they were leaving out stuff. They were leaving out any mention of the gay people. They were or leaving it in Latin, so they were gatekeeping. There's a really good article by Dr. Eric Wade, he's on Twitter, and his website's really good, that talks about this. People are going back to the original documents and they're finding.
Yes.
They talked about this. This was real. This wasn't another myth of the Middle Ages that sort of was often used to local white supremacy. And it's another brick that's getting knocked out of.
Yeah. So at the time, that was the pop culture of the time, and they were cutting out what was uncomfortable to them, and they didn't want, the white men in charge. They were cutting it out because they didn't want anybody else to know about it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Last one.
I was going to say, in terms of established characters being recast in remakes as like the Black Mermaid that everybody's all talking about. Yes, it might be better if they wrote a new story with a new mermaid and have a new character. But they don't ever like to write new stories. They want to write ones that they know are popular and they're going to make money off of.
Mm-hmm.
If they would stop rerunning old stories into the ground and write new stories, then they wouldn't have a problem. We can have a Black Mermaid and nobody would bat an eye at it. But because they want to retell the same stories, they know it's a popular story and they're going to make money off of it. Then you have this issue.
Because they want the shock factor.
A generation ago, it'll make money out of for a new generation if we just tweak it this way.
Especially in comics, because you have mantle passing and everything, where a hero retires and gives it to somebody else. And the thing here is, when they say we want to make Robin gay, rather than create a new gay character. We want to make this character, we want to make Captain America black instead of, creating a new black character. It really should be insulting, I think. And I know I'm saying this as a middle-aged, white, heterosexual male, that you should be insulted, people. But it's saying to me that you need to boost up. You need to, you can't make a new character and struggle through this and tell a good story. We're going to give you something that's already existing that a white person did. A white person's history, and then we're going to let you stand on their shoulders and pretend that it's you. I told you I was going to get kicked out of con.
No, you're not. No, but that's just as bad as saying, your culture doesn't count. Your culture doesn't count. Yours doesn't count. Going, oh, okay, here, I'm a white. I am a white person, and I'm going to let you just stand on my shoulders, and I'm going to elevate you.
It's the soft bigotry of low expectations.
There you go. Soft bigotry. And that's, no. And unfortunately, that happens to be pop culture level.
Yeah, we could obviously go on for a while longer, but we're past our time. So if you guys have any closing statements you want to leave with, or are you good?
I'm good.
There's a Twitter video that somebody shared with me yesterday, a friend of mine, and it's the I want to know this, so I have to go over here and then come down, and I'm at the same point of do the fucking research. Okay? Yeah. And that's just it. Don't take anything for granted. Pop culture just happens to be what is popular today, and it always changes. It always changes. And we have to be able to grow with our changes. If not,